At this point, every man and their dog knows I'm not exactly the biggest fan of Train Sim World 4, and I'll explain why that is in a future video. And, well, some people are very, very unhappy. Now, contrary to many other well-researched opinions, I do actually have basis for my negative outlook on the game. That's not to say, however, that I don't like anything included in the upcoming release, as I definitely do. And these things are, funnily enough, the topic of this video. Starting off strong here, the editor will, simply put, revolutionise the Train Sim World franchise, or at least many of us are hoping it will. The ability for dedicated fans to move from fixing bugs in existing content to making their own fully fledged routes, trains and timetables is a massive improvement for those with access to the editor and the content made with it. The official release and support of the editor will cut customers from the hole Dovetail have dug us in, and we are no longer reliant on hope and aspirations to turn highly requested content, the likes of more global routes, East Coast Mainline South, and more metro-style routes such as S-Bahn Berlin or a New York subway route, to fruition. Instead, we can turn this aspiration towards whoever has the most likes on forum development posts. The ability to collaborate with others in the dev process to some extent will also allow the startup of unofficial third-party development groups, and undoubtedly the quality of this kind of content will increase over time. Dovetail have also said themselves how they will be looking at inviting the best editor creators and groups to join the official paid third-party program, adding additional monetary incentives for excellence. I myself have plans for what I want to do with the editor, as do most people. Some of them will require hard work, sweat and tears, whereas others will be a bit more straightforward. You can guess which one I'll start off with. I won't dwell on what exactly my plans are, but certainly don't expect for me to release anything this year at least. I might, but you'll have to wait and see. Before we move on, I would like to point out that if you are interested in learning more about the editor, I highly recommend you go and watch Dovetail's own stream of the editor. It was one of the most engaging things that I have seen in regards to publicity for Train Sim World 4. Dovetail's use of LiDAR resources to build far more accurate terrain may not be completely new for Train Sim World 4, as I'm sure they've done a little bit of it in previous games, but Dovetail have certainly been making noise about its potential and their use of it. And don't get me wrong, the results are pretty spectacular. Paired with greatly improved optimization and a higher draw distance, LiDAR could significantly raise the standard of scenery in the game, which could certainly rebuild my and many other people's trust in Dovetail. And I look forward to seeing what community content can be made with this technology, considering its increasing global availability. Volumetric Fog is another aspect of Train Sim World 4 that Dovetail have been making lots of noise about, and I hope for good reason. From what I've seen so far from the official content, it looks like a decent addition to the franchise, making the driving experience far more immersive in many situations, something that's lost in a lot of other features. Some screenshots, however, appear to perhaps have a bit too much fog, making it feel like driving through sludge instead of air to some extent. I also hope to dear God Almighty that the dynamic effects strapped to this fog are done correctly and the fog applies correctly within buildings. If we think back to Train Sim World 3 and the new lighting engine and the new dynamic weather, those botched changes and what it looks like on the inside of train sheds like St Pancras, it looks absolutely awful, it looks shit, and I really don't want that to be repeated in Train Sim World 4. So fingers crossed it won't be, and fingers crossed that it will be properly implemented. And I do think that it will make a significant increase to the driving experience in most situations. The Vorarlberg route shows Dovetail are now somewhat capable of proper mountainous routes, which does bode well for the future of the routes they choose to produce. They've hinted at more cross-border and Austrian routes, which presumably would involve more use of this mountain scenery. Unfortunately, the mountains are still slightly hindered by the trees rendering very close to the player, which gives the mountains a bald look from far away. That said though, it's still much better than the Arosa line. The inclusion of Austrian and cross-border content in Train Sim World 4 is a good sign for the future, and hopefully more international content can be included moving forwards in the franchise. I hope you can see now that I am not merely a shit-smearing pessimist whose only goal is destroying Dovetail's brand reputation, despite the insistence of many people that I am exactly that. The good aspects of Train Sim World 4 explored in this video are still unfortunately far outweighed by the negative ones. On a more serious note, it's important to understand that I stand to gain nothing from constantly shitting on Train Sim World 4 and Dovetail games in general. As such, all of my criticisms of Train Sim World 4, even the strong ones, are fueled by a genuine desire for the Train Sim World franchise to excel in the simulation field. It pains me to see a game that shows such promise killed by a lack of interest in the product and more of an interest in the customers' wallets. Of course, some will ask why I bother with this, as obviously Dovetail games are not going to change strategy as a result of my opinions, and this is something that I do question often. Something else that I ponder occasionally is the influence of DTG ambassadors to the overall attitudes towards negative criticism of Train Sim World 4. The ambassadors, channels such as the British Ace, Megasim and Dadrail, whilst on the whole putting out very good content reflected in their deserved substantial followings, do receive significant compensation from Dovetail games, such as free content. As such, they almost never criticise Dovetail Games products, quite rightly being careful not to risk their valuable contracts. I reflect sometimes on the consequences of this void in critical commentary, and whether or not it creates a general negative attitude towards those who do produce negative commentary, such as myself. Anyway, that's enough philosophy for one day. Thanks for watching this to the end. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you haven't, please do tell me why in the comments. And with that, have a fantastic day. Goodbye.